The Other Side Media Group and 91X now present The Other Side Radio Show, a program about people who make a difference from all walks of life in Quinte and beyond. And now here are your hosts, Jeremy and Joshua Davis.
Hi, I'm Doug KNUTSON, video producer and historian. I'm talking on The Other Side Live with Josh and Jeremy Davis at the Country Inn and Suites by Radisson.
Hello and welcome once again to The Other Side Radio Show live at the Country Inn and Suites with Joshua Davis. I'm Jeremy Davis, and joining us behind the mic today, we have our good friend, Doug KNUTSON, back on our show. Welcome to our show. It's great to have you in the hot seat today. Now, Doug, for the people who don't know, take us back to the beginning of how you started in your wonderful profession.
Well, this is my 30th year in business as producer at Windswept Productions. I went to Queen's University back in the early 80s and took a film course out of interest, and it just clicked with me, and majored in film studies, and didn't even think that this was a career possibility back then, but thanks to technology, here I am 36 years later, and 30 years in business, and busy as I can be.
What made you decide you wanted to choose that career path and communicate people's stories and document history? And we'll go from there, Doug.
Well, as a kid, I always remember either at school or at my church, I just loved doing plays, and I loved stories. Everybody hated history. That seems to be a common thing in this country, but to me, it was just stories. So I just loved thinking about it, and I remember my brother and I would reenact all these history stories. So I guess it's just the power of story that kind of got to me, and with the technology of film and then later video and digital video, it's become more accessible, and now I carry a cell phone on my hip that's got more power than any camera I could have used back in the 80s or 90s.
Well, absolutely. It's amazing how the technological advances have come in this 2020, and instantly people can get the story or the photo either on social media such as Facebook or Instagram, or you can get the show anytime on YouTube. So it's just amazing. We wouldn't have thought that 30 years ago, would we?
No, absolutely not. The change in technology, I mean, everything is really kind of stunning, but in this business, I think back sometimes to how I worked or produced a video back then. It was just so difficult and so expensive and heavy. I used to have neck problems because of all the equipment that I had to lug around. I think the camera was about 30 pounds, the battery was 30 pounds, and the tripod was 30 pounds. So I had upper back trouble in those days. Now it's lower back. But yeah, it's really kind of stunning to think what sits on my desk now. I wouldn't have dreamed of it back in school. Not even science fiction could you have thought what we have today.
Now, Doug, can you tell us some of your memorable moments of becoming a filmmaker?
Well, I remember the first time running a 16 millimeter film camera, and I thought, wow, this is just like, I don't know if Steven Spielberg was out then, but this is just kind of a dream. That's right. E.T. was out. Yes, he was. I remember watching a lot of E.T. when I was in school. But a lot of memorable moments. I've worked on some big movies like The Edge, working with Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin and a giant grizzly bear, and thought that was quite something. And I've worked in far-off places. I've been to Switzerland and Africa,
That's amazing.
Haiti. Yeah, so I just find it's...
Were you scared at all, or thrilled about the experience, or a little bit of both?
A tiny little bit of fear, I guess. I often find when I have a camera in my hands, I don't fear like I should or would without it. I remember filming a prostate operation over the shoulders of a doctor, and it never really hit me until we were cleaning up afterwards. Or I was hanging out of a plane with the door off. I remember I was seat belted, but the guy with me was holding onto my belt. And I'm thinking, if I was just sitting there looking at this, I would not be feeling too safe. But looking through the lens of a camera, it kind of puts you in a different mode, I guess.
A picture tells 1,000 words. Don't you agree?
Yes, a picture really does. I mean, it's amazing what people can tell in stories or on radio, but when you add a motion picture to it, it really, takes you to a different world. And now, of course, you go to a movie. Well, I saw Star Wars the other night. That was a lot of different worlds.
Now, what would you say, Doug, before we get into some of the other reason why we have you on the show here today, is one of the most challenging things for you as a video producer, to get the story and to convey your vision and, draw your audience in. We might have been over this in a previous interview, but there's new people all the time tuning in, so it's nice to get that refreshing viewpoint as the years go by.
It really is kind of a thrill to me to sit in a theater and watch people watch what you've produced, and to see them laugh or cry or sometimes both. It's that whole storyteller thrill, I guess, and that's kind of what motivates me, I guess. It's always a challenge. Every project that comes up, how can you grab people's attention and hold it and make them feel something or make them do something? I'm still learning 30-some years later, probably will be till however long I go. But that's what I love about the job, is it's always new. There's always something, it's, project to project. There's always a different challenge. Sometimes it's pretty, one client gave me a photograph they wanted done from, I think that first one we did from a drone, of the entire staff out in the field in the shape of a maple leaf. Had to be done over, the one version we did had to be done over 4 or 5 different days, and then Photoshop together, and you take out the shadows and make, one day would be sunny, one day would be cloudy. It was just kind of a nightmare. But now the pictures are hanging up all over the plant, and I get kind of a little shot of pride every time I walk by and see it.
Last year, you had your award-winning film about the dam beavers. And can you tell us about that for the people that may not know?
Yeah, that project was literally dropped in our laps. I remember saying to my wife that I've always had something in the Dock Fest every year since it started. And last year, or the year before, I guess now, I didn't have any ideas or really the motivation to do anything. And then this whole beaver incident happened to us. And in a nutshell, it was, we saw a struggling beaver, tried to get help, ended up having to mount a rescue, and found out that the beaver had been trapped. And it basically uncovered an entire issue of how municipalities deal with nuisance animals like beavers, and they trap them. And in the case of beavers, that involves drowning over 15 minutes or so. So that's now kind of taken over my life. I've been to an international beaver conference in Oregon. I've been to Vancouver, Victoria. I'm hoping, I still haven't worked this out, to go to another international conference in Baltimore in March. But this is something that affects every city as it continues to grow into the natural world. We're running into nature, and nature sometimes fights back. And, the standard answer over the years is just kill it, kill it, kill it. Kill our way out of this. That's wrong, and it's not in our own interest. Beavers are tremendously valuable animals, and it's much better to learn with them and adapt to them than to eradicate them. So that's one project in the works, and I've got a few more in the works, and keeps me pretty busy.
I want to ask you, Doug, do you believe that we're taking up the wetlands and the habitats are going away because of this?
No, there's no question that we're just pushing into the natural world, and we seem to be shocked when we have flooding, or we have coyotes running through town, or some issue here or there. I think we got to put an end to the never-ending growth at some point and learn to live smarter. And nature's our support system, and if we keep stamping on it, there will be nothing to support us.
And we got to live in harmony and peace.
I feel like breaking into a song now.
Well, absolutely. Josh is right, and you're right, Doug. One of the reasons why we wanted to have you on the show today is another controversial issue has come up in our area, in our neck of the woods, if you will. But there is actually, this is a global implication. And we're just citing Belleville's example right now. This past Monday, at our local municipal council meeting, a deputation was made by two individuals, that approached our Belleville City Council here in Belleville, Ontario, and they said that they think, and they made their case, to have our historic Myers Pier renamed because our founder, or who Belleville has been known to be founded by, a prominent figure in our history, John Walden Myers, was a slave owner back in his time. And so this is the reason they said, they cited all their case, and they said it's high time that we, get rid of a name like this that doesn't represent our values and that stands for our racist, situation with Myers and his life at the time. And now the Hastings County Historical Society has counteracted. You have counteracted in your research and your expertise in the field of history, because we don't want to see, or you guys don't want to see, a name change, because just because there could be dark moments in Canadian history or history in general doesn't mean you can erase that. It just means that we should tell the whole story, but you have to also take it into context. Do you want to expand on that? And we'll go from there, Doug.
Well, this is my oldest project. When I started my business 30 years ago, I had this dream of making a documentary about Captain Myers. It's something that I kept running across. When I was back in school, I did my final year project on a family of loyalists, because that was 1984, and that was our bicentennial year. I kept running into the name Myers. So when I started my business, I thought, oh, what a great story this is. Nobody knows anything about him. So here it is, 30 years later, still working on the same project. But I only work on it when I have time and money, so you can imagine how often that is. Anyway, the issue of slavery, I find it actually shameful that it comes as a surprise to almost everyone that slavery existed here. I mean, it's never been a hidden fact, but we have somehow selectively forgotten this. We think of slavery only with the Deep South, and this is the land that the Underground Railroad led to. In fact, when we started, there was an Underground Railroad leading from Ontario, or Upper Canada, to the northern states. Now, in one generation, the generation of Myers and his fellow citizens, that changed. They came with their slaves. They needed their slaves, so they said, or so they thought, because of the immense amount of labor in clearing the land, clearing the trees. The British were developing a kind of an abolitionist movement, and they wanted the Loyalist settlers to give up their slaves where the Loyalists wanted to keep them. But it seemed to be a negotiated process that over 20-some, 30-some years, slavery went from being very common to being non-existent and finally outlawed in 1833. Myers, from what we know very, very little about his slaves, and it actually, what was presented at the deputation was based on fabrication. So we need to know our history, but we need to know it accurately and the real facts. And we don't need, fabrication or stuff that's built on, not lies, but it's so easy to take something out of context and then pass it on as a fact, and then that gets added to, and then that gets added to, and finally you've got something that doesn't even resemble the truth. So the only thing we know is that he owned slaves, plural, meaning two at least, and we know the identity of one of his slaves. Now, a primary source that can be depended on says that this one slave, Betty Levi, was freed early on, much earlier than the law required, and stayed with Captain Myers or his family until either his death or her death. I can't quite figure that out. So there's good evidence, and there's other secondary sources in family tradition that said Myers was an early emancipator. Anyway, the fact is that these people had a complete change of attitude, and we don't credit them with that in this. The idea of changing the name, you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Yes, it was a terrible evil that was associated with them, but we have some evils with our society. We're stuck on fossil fuels. We're stuck on nuclear energy. They're going to curse us in 100 years, I'm sure, but it's so darn convenient. And it was not an easy thing. Look what the Americans went through to get rid of their slavery, the bloodiest war in their history. We did it first. We were the first place. Upper Canada was the first place in the British Empire to begin the abolition of slavery. And I think, there is some shame involved in our history, but there's also some pride in it. So I'm hoping to set the record straight, get the facts out there, and I think Captain Myers should be a source of pride and unity for our area, not ridicule and shame.
Now, Doug, how do you learn from our history without erasing our past?
How do I learn from history without erasing the past? Well, I don't think you can erase the past. I mean, the past is what made us. Obviously, history is about humans, so the imperfect all the way along, always will be. But it's like when plane crashes happen. You learn what went wrong, and then you apply that to the next training flight, so that hopefully, as things go on, we build up a repertoire of things not to do and to do. And history is a great way to teach us what we've done wrong and what we should be doing right.
I think you're exactly right, that we can't erase any of the past. We just have to have greater education and get the next generation involved. Before I say a little bit about, Ontario Heritage Week coming up and the reason why we celebrate that, what does heritage mean to you, and why do you think it's so important to preserve our fundamental legacy, not only here in Belleville, or Ontario, but this country and indeed around the world?
Well, I'm admittedly a history geek, always have been, but I think history and heritage gives us color. It gives it can be a very bland and lifeless world without culture, and our heritage is what created our culture. Same with all the cultures that are coming here. That's what, when you travel someplace, you don't want to go to another strip mall. You want to go and see, the cathedrals or the temples or the forts or whatever it is. And that's what gives our world color, I think. So you need to know it. It's, I don't know of any country that's got a shiny, perfect heritage, but we certainly don't. But I think we should be preserving it and celebrating it.
Now, Doug, what is your legacy you want to leave filmmaking as a whole?
That's a good question. I'm now at the point in my life where I'm starting to think what I'm going to leave. With this Captain Myers film, it's taken so long. I'm thinking, I used to say jokingly, says, I'd like to finish this before I die, but now that's getting kind of serious. But I want to leave stories that people don't seem to know about their own history, and that we do indeed have a heritage, and we do have something that we can be collectively proud of or interested in at least. And if I can have some small part in that, then that would make me happy.
Now, very quickly, coming up, we have the Ontario Heritage Week celebration in the beautiful city of Belleville on Thursday evening, February the 20th, 2020, at the Core Arts and Cultural Center, the former Corby Library, 223 Pinnacle Street, and doors open at 6 with the program and awards to follow at 6:30. Admission is free and all are welcome. And you may be double booked for that night, Doug, but you've often shown up, and it's a great time. Nominations are still being accepted for Heritage Revitalization Awards up until the end of Sunday if we don't extend it. So please visit belleville.ca for more information and get a worthy individual, nominated in there. Doug, if you can think of any, please get it to Heritage Belleville. We would love to receive it. Now, Doug, if people are listening out there and want to know more and see more of your fascinating body of work, they can find out on YouTube and all kinds of ways. Maybe you can tell them how, and we'll go from there, my friend.
Well, I have a web page that's sorely in need of updating, windswept.productions.ca, but that leads to YouTube, and I should put my Vimeo page up there too. These are the greatest ways to share videos these days. If you want to learn more about history, I'd say come out to the Historical Society meetings. We're getting very good crowds, very interesting talks, and now they're being recorded by yours truly. So they're going to go on the Historical Society YouTube channel and Facebook.
Well, thank you so very much for being a part of The Other Side Live here today at the Country Inn and Suites by Radisson. Our thanks to the staff for allowing us and hosting us here at this beautiful facility on North Front. Yes, you can learn more about Windswept Productions at windswept.productions.ca too. And on YouTube, it's WinPro, I believe. Isn't it, Doug? We're one of your subscribers. So we hope to have you back real soon. You're a great friend. Well, your family too. Distant cousin, yes, that's for sure. So for now, this has been The Other Side Live on location. I'm Jeremy Davis. I'm Joshua Davison. Glad to be here with Cousin Doug. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
The Other Side Radio Show is a production of the Other Side Media Group in association with 91X. Copyright 2020, all rights reserved. Connect on Facebook at The Other Side Media Group, Instagram at Jeremy Tyler Davis, or on YouTube at Jeremy T. Davis, Belleville, Ontario for on-demand episodes and more. Tune in next time for another great episode of The Other Side Radio Show.